The Aurora Nexus Peace Station hung in silent orbit around Titan, Saturn's largest moon. Its crystalline structure, a marvel of cooperative engineering, caught the distant sunlight in prismatic arrays, casting rainbow fractals across the station's circular Grand Assembly Hall. Here, representatives from 20 species gathered around a massive ring-shaped table, their vastly different forms illuminated by the soft blue glow of holographic displays. Admiral Elena Reyes of Earth sat rigidly in her chair, her dark uniform adorned with the modest pins and medals of United Earth Command. Unlike the elaborate regalia of other species, human military decoration emphasized function and achievement over pageantry. At 53, Elena's salt and pepper hair was pulled back in a severe bun, her olive-skinned face marked by fine lines earned through decades of service during the galactic border wars. Beside her sat Ambassador Susan Lee, Earth's chief diplomatic representative. Her burgundy diplomatic coat was tailored in the minimalist style that had become Earth's signature in interstellar politics, understated yet precise. Susan's calm demeanor masked the tension Elena could see in her eyes. They'd worked together for 15 years, and Elena had learned to read those subtle cues. Across the circular table, Ambassador Korath Prime of the Cybran Confederacy tapped his elongated fingers impatiently. His scaled skin shimmered with iridescent patterns that betrayed his emotional state to those familiar with Cybran physiology. The patterns now pulsed with unmistakable contempt. "We return to the issue of defensive limitations," announced the session mediator, a Peloran whose translucent body glowed with neural patterns. "The Concord requests that Earth's delegation address the proposals submitted by the Varkarian hegemony." Elena exchanged a glance with Susan. This was the fourth time in 2 days that the Concord Council had circled back to this particular demand. The year 2475 marked the 5th anniversary of the ceasefire that had ended the galactic border wars. Yet true peace remained elusive. General Vrag of the Varkarian hegemony rose to his considerable height, towering over the other representatives. His armor, embedded with trophies from past conquests, clinked as he moved. The universal translator rendered his guttural speech into the common diplomatic language. "The Varkarian position remains unchanged," Vrag rumbled, mandibles clicking. "Earth's defensive grid extends beyond reasonable security needs. The hegemony proposes a complete dismantlement of Earth's outer system defenses in exchange for Varkarian protection." Elena felt her jaw tighten. The Varkarian definition of protection was well known throughout the galaxy, a thinly veiled form of military occupation. The human delegation had reviewed the detailed proposals the previous night, and the terms were even more insulting upon careful examination. Susan Lee's voice remained measured as she responded. "Earth appreciates the hegemony's concern for our security. However, as we have previously stated, Earth's defensive systems are proportionate to the threats we have faced, including 3 unprovoked incursions into our territory during the last decade." Korath Prime's scales flashed a pattern that Elena recognized as dismissive amusement. Perhaps if humans were not so provocative in their expansion, such incursions would not be necessary. The implied insult hung in the air. Around the table, representatives from the lesser powers, the Jaren Federation, the Peloran Commonwealth, and others, shifted uncomfortably. These smaller factions often found themselves caught between the major powers in the Concord. "Earth has adhered to every territorial limitation established in the ceasefire," Susan replied, her composure unwavering. "Our expansion has been limited to previously unoccupied systems, as permitted under Article 7 of the Boundary Accords." "Technically correct," interjected a Molavian representative, their gelatinous form rippling. "Yet many find the human approach unsettling. Your species advances rapidly, adapts technologies with alarming speed." "Is innovation now considered a diplomatic offense?" Elena asked, breaking her silence. The Admiral rarely spoke during these sessions, preferring to leave negotiations to Susan while she observed the room's dynamics. Korath Prime's scales flashed bright orange, a sign of agitation. It becomes an offense when it threatens stability. Admiral, the Concord has maintained peace for centuries before humans emerged from their isolated system. A peace maintained through careful balance, added General Vrag. Earth refuses to accept its proper place in this balance. Susan placed a calming hand on Elena's arm, then addressed the assembly. Earth has demonstrated its commitment to peaceful coexistence. We've shared medical advancements, terraforming technologies, while withholding military innovations, interrupted Korath. The Phantom Veil Project, for instance. Elena's expression remained neutral, though internally she cursed. The Phantom Veil was a classified stealth system, still in development. That Korath knew even the project name represented a serious intelligence breach. I'm not familiar with the project you're referencing, Susan replied smoothly. But Earth maintains the right to classified research for defensive purposes, as do all Concord members. The difference, Korath continued, leaning forward, is that other members recognize their obligations to share technologies that could upset the galactic balance. The session mediator's glow intensified. Let us return to the Varkarian proposal. Earth's delegation is asked to provide a timeline for the decommissioning of the following defensive installations. As the mediator listed strategic human outposts, Elena felt a cold fury building within her. These weren't just random installations. They represented Earth's entire outer defense perimeter. Without them, the home system would be vulnerable to any aggressive action. Susan was taking diplomatic notes, but Elena could see from her posture that she shared the same assessment. The demands weren't just unreasonable. They were deliberately designed to be rejected, providing pretext for whatever came next. Furthermore, General Vrag continued, we propose a Varkarian security contingent be stationed on Luna to ensure compliance. That was the final straw. Elena subtly tapped a pattern on Susan's datapad, a prearranged signal they had established for extreme situations. Susan's eyes widened slightly, but she gave an almost imperceptible nod. The delegation requests a brief recess to consider these proposals, Susan announced. There is nothing to consider, Korath replied dismissively. The terms are reasonable. Earth must recognize its junior status within the galactic community. Your species has existed among the stars for barely a century, while the Sebron have guided interstellar policy for millennia. Elena stood, her movement so sudden that several representatives flinched. Ambassador Lee, I believe we have heard enough. Susan rose as well, gathering her materials with practiced efficiency. The Earth delegation must respectfully withdraw from these proceedings. A murmur of shock rippled through the assembly. Walking out of Concord negotiations was unprecedented. You cannot simply leave, protested the Pelleran mediator, its luminescence pulsating with alarm. Protocol requires good faith negotiation, Elena interrupted. What we're hearing are demands for surrender disguised as diplomacy. General Vrag's mandibles clicked rapidly, a Varkarian expression of satisfaction. Perhaps humans are not ready for the complexities of galactic politics after all. On the contrary, Elena replied, her voice carrying throughout the chamber. We understand perfectly. It seems the Concord has forgotten that peace requires mutual respect. Without another word, Elena and Susan turned and walked toward the exit. The silence in the chamber was absolute, broken only by the soft sound of the human delegation's footsteps. As they passed through the doorway, Elena heard Korath Prime speak to the assembly. Let the record show that humans abandoned the peace process. Whatever consequences follow are of their own making. The massive doors of the Grand Assembly Hall slid shut behind them with a resonant thud. In the private corridor outside, Susan finally allowed her diplomatic mask to slip. They're going to spin this as human aggression. Elena, We'll be painted as warmongers." "They were already preparing to do that," Elena replied, her pace brisk, as they headed toward the Earth Embassy section of the station. "The difference is, now we're acting instead of reacting." "Acting how? We just walked out on the most important diplomatic summit in decades." Elena's expression was grim. "Walking out was just the first step. Open a secure channel to General Tran. Authorization code, Phoenix Ascendant." Susan's eyes widened. "You're activating Phantom Veil? That's a direct violation of... Of what? Treaties they've already decided to ignore?" Elena stopped walking, turning to face her colleague. "They know about the project, Susan. That means they've infiltrated our intelligence networks deeper than we thought. We can't afford to wait." After a moment's hesitation, Susan nodded. "I'll establish the secure channel, but the diplomatic fallout will be severe." "Diplomacy works only when both sides fear the alternative," Elena said as they continued walking. "It's time to remind them why Earth should be approached with respect, not condescension." Within the Earth Embassy section, heavily shielded against surveillance, Elena authorized the Phoenix Ascendant Protocol. Across the solar system and beyond, carefully positioned Earth vessels received their activation codes. Operation Phantom Veil, years in the planning but never expected to be needed so soon, commenced in silence. The next 12 hours were a carefully choreographed dance of military precision, while Susan worked tirelessly to explain Earth's position to neutral factions. Elena coordinated with Earth Command. Each communication was brief, encrypted, and untraceable. At least, that's what Dr. Arjun Patel had promised when he'd developed the quantum entanglement communicators. "Admiral, Fleet Group Artemis reports ready status," announced Elena's aide, Lieutenant Commander Jackson. "All vessels have engaged Phantom Veil systems." Elena nodded, studying the tactical display in her private command center. 17 Earth vessels had vanished from conventional detection systems, their revolutionary stealth technology rendering them invisible to all known sensors. Even more crucially, 4 specialized intelligence vessels had slipped into position near key Concord communication nodes. "And Dr. Patel's team?" "Standing by, Admiral. They've completed preliminary access to the Concord data network." Elena checked the time. Nearly 18 hours since they'd walked out of the assembly hall. By now, the Concord Council would be debating punitive measures against Earth, perhaps even preparing military exercises near human space. "Commence Phase 2, Elena ordered. "Observe only. No systems disruption yet." As the orders were relayed, Elena turned to find Susan entering the command center, looking exhausted but determined. "The diplomatic channels are buzzing," Susan reported. "The Jarun Federation and 3 minor powers have expressed private support for our position, though they can't do so publicly. The Peleran are officially neutral, but uncomfortable with the Varkarian demands." "And the major powers?" "Exactly as expected. The Sebron are calling for sanctions. The Varkarians are moving warships toward the Arcturus checkpoint, claiming it's a scheduled deployment." Elena nodded. "They're testing our resolve, seeing if we'll blink first." "What exactly is our play here, Elena?" Susan asked quietly. "We can't outfight the combined Concord forces." "We don't need to fight them all," Elena replied. "We just need to demonstrate that the cost of fighting us would be unacceptably high." Susan's expression showed dawning comprehension. "You're planning to expose their vulnerabilities." "I'm planning to demonstrate them," Elena corrected. "There's a difference." Their conversation was interrupted as Lieutenant Commander Jackson approached with urgent news. "Admiral, we've detected unusual activity in the Varkarian fleet movements. They're not just posturing at Arcturus. They're establishing a blockade formation." Elena studied the updated tactical display. "They're moving faster than anticipated. Activate the Nexus protocol." "Elena," Susan warned, "that's a significant escalation." "It's a proportional response to a blockade," Elena countered. "And it's time the Concord learned that humans don't respond well to threats." As dawn broke over the diplomatic quarter of Aurora Nexus the following day, representatives from 20 species converged on the Grand Assembly Hall for an emergency session. The Varkarian blockade of the Arcturus checkpoint, a key transit hub for Earth commerce, had triggered automatic provisions in the boundary accords, requiring Concord mediation. What they found upon entering the hall, however, was not what anyone expected. On each representative's data terminal was a simple message: "Phantom echoes in the void. Look to your foundations." Confusion spread through the assembly until Korath Prime activated his terminal and let out a hiss of shock. On his screen appeared classified Sebron defense plans. Not just any plans, but those detailing potential operations against Earth. Across the chamber, similar reactions erupted as representatives discovered their own sensitive data displayed before them. Military deployments, secret economic leverage points, private communications disparaging other species, all laid bare. When General Vrag attempted to contact the Varkarian fleet, he found communication impossible. The holographic display in the center of the chamber activated unbidden, showing real-time footage of Varkarian warships drifting powerless in space, their systems completely shut down. Before anyone could process this development, the main doors opened, and Admiral Elena Reyes entered, followed by Ambassador Susan Lee. They walked calmly to their seats as the chamber erupted in accusations and demands for explanation. The Pelleran mediator, its luminescence now a chaotic swirl of patterns, called frantically for order. When the tumult finally subsided, all eyes turned to the human delegation. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded Korath Prime, his scales now a dark purple of rage and fear. Elena regarded him calmly. "Yesterday, you made it clear that Earth has no place at this table, except as a subordinate. Today, we're demonstrating why that assessment was flawed." "You've committed an act of war," snarled General Vrag. The hegemony will do nothing," interrupted Elena. "Your fleet at Arcturus is currently without power. Don't worry. Life support systems remain functional. Your crews are uncomfortable, but safe." "Impossible," Vrag insisted. "Our systems are shielded against all known forms of interference." "Known forms," Elena emphasized. "Humanity has been underestimated since we first ventured beyond our solar system. You see our relative youth among the stars as weakness. We see it differently." Susan took over, her diplomatic training evident as she addressed the assembly. "For centuries, the Concord has maintained what it calls peace through a rigid hierarchy of power. Species are assigned their place based on history rather than potential. Earth rejects this model." "You speak of rejection while displaying outright aggression," protested a Malavian representative. "You've infiltrated our most secure networks, disabled sovereign vessels." "We have demonstrated capability," corrected Susan. "Nothing more. No information has been stolen or destroyed. No vessel has been damaged. No life has been threatened." Elena tapped her console, and the central hologram changed to display a complex network of connections. "This is the Concord's central data architecture. Your civilizations have grown so interconnected that you've created a single point of vulnerability." The display zoomed in, highlighting critical nodes in the network. "These 7 connection points manage everything from military communications to economic transactions. Dr. Arjun Patel calls it structural resonance, the tendency of complex systems to develop shared weaknesses when they evolve together." The shocked silence that followed was broken by Korath Prime. "You're bluffing, even if you've managed some temporary intrusion. Our security protocols are compromised," Elena finished for him. "Have been for months. While your intelligence services were focusing on our visible military developments, Dr. Patel's team was quietly exploiting the blind spots in your integrated systems." She nodded to Lieutenant Commander Jackson, who activated a secondary display. On it appeared footage from various secure facilities throughout Concord space, command centers, research installations, even the private chambers of several present representatives. "We could have done worse," Elena said quietly. "Much worse." The Peleran mediator drifted forward, its glow now a steady, serious blue. "What are your demands, Admiral Reyes?" "Earth has no demands," Susan answered. "Only expectations. We expect to be treated as equals. We expect our sovereignty to be respected. We expect good faith negotiations rather than thinly veiled ultimatums." "And if these expectations are not met?" asked a Jaren representative. Elena's expression remained impassive. "Then humanity will chart its own course, alone if necessary, but unbound by constraints we never agreed to." The implications hung in the air. Earth had demonstrated not just the ability to defend itself, but to potentially cripple the conquered's integrated infrastructure. The cost of conflict had suddenly become incalculably high. After a tense silence, the Peleran mediator spoke. "I propose a 3-day recess to allow all parties to reassess their positions. During this time, I request that Earth restore functionality to the affected Varkarian vessels as a gesture of good faith." Elena nodded. "Agreed. Power will be restored within the hour." As the emergency session disbanded, representatives huddled in anxious groups, their previous confidence shattered. The political landscape had shifted dramatically overnight. In their private chambers, Susan turned to Elena with a mixture of awe and concern. "That was effective, but we've made powerful enemies today." "We already had powerful enemies," Elena replied. "The difference is, now they know we're not defenseless. And if they unite against us, even with Phantom Veil, we can't stand against the entire Conquered." Elena's expression softened slightly. "They won't unite. Dr. Patel's team has been analyzing the data we've gathered. The Concord is not the monolithic alliance it pretends to be. There are fractures, rivalries, old wounds that have never healed. So we exploit those divisions? We don't need to. They'll do that themselves." Elena walked to the viewport, gazing out at the stars. "Humans aren't the only species chafing under Conquered restrictions. We've just been the first to challenge them openly." Over the next 3 days, the diplomatic landscape transformed. Smaller powers, long overshadowed by the dominant Concord species, began reaching out to Earth through unofficial channels. The Jarun Federation, whose technological innovations had been repeatedly suppressed by Concord regulations, was particularly eager to establish closer ties. Even more telling was the reaction from the Peleran Commonwealth. As mediators, the Peleran had always maintained strict neutrality, but Susan's diplomatic team detected subtle shifts in their positioning, small concessions, private expressions of understanding for Earth's position. On the morning of the 4th day, the Grand Assembly reconvened. The atmosphere was markedly different. Where before, there had been dismissive confidence from the major powers. Now, there was cautious reassessment. The Peleran mediator opened the session with an unexpected announcement. After extensive consultation, the Conquered Council proposes a new framework for our discussions, one based on mutual security rather than hierarchical stability. Korath Prime's scales betrayed his displeasure, but his voice remained controlled. "The Sebran Confederacy acknowledges that adjustments to our approach may be warranted. However, Earth's actions cannot go unaddressed." "We agree," Susan replied. "Just as the Varkarian blockade and the theft of classified Earth intelligence cannot go unaddressed." General Vrag's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation, but before he could respond, a Jaren representative intervened. "Perhaps we should focus on establishing new protocols that prevent such misunderstandings in the future," they suggested. "All parties have demonstrated their capabilities. Now, we must demonstrate our capacity for wisdom." The negotiations that followed were unlike any in Conquered history. Rather than dictating terms from a position of assumed authority, the major powers found themselves engaged in genuine give-and-take diplomacy. Earth's delegation, led by Susan, with Elena providing strategic insight, maintained a firm but fair position. Dr. Arjun Patel joined the delegation, his technical expertise proving invaluable as discussions turned to technology sharing and security protocols. His unassuming manner belied a brilliant mind that had conceptualized the phantom veil and identified the structural vulnerabilities in conquered systems. "The issue isn't technology itself," Dr. Patel explained during a technical subcommittee meeting. "It's the philosophy behind its development. The Concord has prioritized integration over innovation, creating efficiencies but also shared vulnerabilities." The Malavian technical representative, initially skeptical, found themselves nodding in agreement. "Our research has identified similar concerns, but such observations were discouraged." After 12 days of intensive negotiations, a new agreement began to take shape. The New Dawn Accord, as it came to be called, represented a fundamental shift in interstellar relations. Earth would join the Concord, not as a junior member, but as an equal partner, retaining autonomy over its defense systems, while agreeing to reasonable transparency measures. In return, the Concord would restructure its approach to emerging technologies, establishing a more meritocratic evaluation system rather than automatically favoring the innovations of established powers. Compensation for economic losses resulting from the Varkarian blockade would be provided, and a joint security council with rotating membership would replace the previous hierarchy. As the final provisions were being drafted, Elena found herself in an unexpected private meeting with Korath Prime. The Cibran ambassador had requested the conversation, a significant concession from one who had previously refused to acknowledge her as an equal. "You have altered the course of galactic politics, Admiral," Korath said, his scales now a subdued blue-green of resignation mixed with respect. "Not all will thank you for it." "Change is rarely comfortable," Elena replied, "but sometimes necessary. The Cibran have guided the Conquered for millennia. We have seen species rise and fall, civilizations bloom and wither. Humans are different, unpredictable." "Is that a compliment or a concern?" Korath's scales flickered with what might have been amusement. "Both, perhaps. Your species compresses centuries of development into decades. You adapt with alarming speed." "We had to," Elena said simply. "Earth's history is filled with challenges that forced us to evolve or perish. When we reached the stars, we brought that resilience with us. The question remains, will you use that resilience to build or to dominate?" Elena considered the question carefully. "Humanity doesn't seek dominance, Ambassador. We seek partnership, but on equal terms." "Equal terms," Korath repeated, as if testing the concept. "A novel approach to galactic relations?" "Perhaps novel for the Concord," Elena acknowledged. "But on Earth, we learned long ago that the strongest alliances are those built on mutual respect rather than fear or obligation." When the final session of the negotiations began, an unexpected gesture changed the tone of the proceedings. General Vrag, whose aggressive posturing had precipitated the crisis, approached the human delegation before the formal commencement. "The hegemony acknowledges its miscalculation," he stated, mandibles held in a position that his species recognized as apologetic. "Varkarians respect strength. Humans have demonstrated theirs, not just in capability, but in restraint." The formal signing of the New Dawn Accord took place in the central atrium of Aurora Nexus, a symbolic location where the artificial gravity was minimal. Representatives from all 20 species floated in a circle, physically equal in the reduced gravity environment, a subtle but powerful metaphor for the new relationship being established. As Susan applied Earth's digital signature to the agreement, applause rippled through the gathering. Not universal. Some representatives, particularly those from the previously dominant factions, remained reserved, but genuine nonetheless. "The New Dawn Accord is ratified," announced the Peleran mediator, its luminescence now a bright, clear gold. May it mark the beginning of a more equitable and prosperous era for all our peoples. The formal reception that followed was a curious affair. Species that had previously interacted only through rigid diplomatic protocols now engaged in more casual exchanges. Dr. Patel found himself surrounded by technical representatives eager to discuss his theories on system architecture. Susan moved skillfully through the gathering, strengthening new alliances and soothing lingering concerns. Elena, less comfortable in social settings, retreated to a quiet alcove overlooking Titan's cloud-covered surface. She was surprised when a Jaren representative joined her, the crystalline being's facets catching the light in prismatic patterns. "Admiral Reyes, your actions have given hope to many who had none," the Jaren said, their voice a melodic hum through the translator. "The smaller powers have long awaited such a shift in the balance." "We didn't set out to be revolutionaries," Elena replied. "We simply refused to accept an unequal position. Sometimes. That is all revolution requires. The courage to say no when yes is expected." The Jaroon's crystalline form shifted in what might have been their equivalent of a thoughtful gesture. "The path ahead will not be easy. Old powers do not relinquish influence willingly, even when they appear to do so." "Earth understands persistence," Elena assured them. "We'll see this through." As the reception wound down, General Min Tran arrived from Earth, having personally overseen the deactivation of the Phantom Veil systems. His presence was both a practical necessity, ensuring the technology was properly secured, and a diplomatic statement, showing Earth's commitment to the new security protocols. "The fleet is standing down from alert status," he reported to Elena in a private moment. "Though I've maintained enhanced patrols along the border regions, as we discussed." "Good," Elena nodded. "Trust but verify." "Dr. Patel wants to speak with you when you have a moment," Tran added. "Something about the next generation of defense systems." Elena smiled slightly. "Always looking ahead, isn't he? Tell him we'll talk once we're back on Earth. For now, let's focus on consolidating what we've achieved here." In the final hours before the Earth delegation departed Aurora Nexus, Elena found herself once more in the Grand Assembly Hall, now empty and silent. The circular table where, just weeks ago, humanity had been treated with condescension, now symbolized a new balance of power. Susan found her there, standing at the viewport that offered a spectacular view of Saturn's rings. "Contemplating your place in history, Admiral?" "Contemplating how quickly things change," Elena replied, "and how much remains to be done." "We've accomplished more than anyone thought possible," Susan pointed out. "Earth has secured its position. The new technology-sharing initiatives will accelerate development across multiple species. The Security Council reforms give smaller powers a genuine voice." "All true," Elena acknowledged. "But institutions resist change, even when they formally accept it. The real work begins now, making sure this new equality exists in practice, not just on paper." Susan smiled. "You never rest, do you?" "Neither do you," Elena countered with a rare smile of her own. "I saw your draft proposals for the cultural exchange program. Ambitious doesn't begin to describe them." "Cultural understanding underlies everything else," Susan said with conviction. "Military deterrence and diplomatic agreements create the space for cooperation, but true peace requires genuine connection." The conversation was interrupted by Lieutenant Commander Jackson, who approached with a formal notification. "Admiral, Ambassador, the Earth vessel Horizon is ready for departure. General Tran and Dr. Patel are already aboard." As they made their way to the docking bay, they passed representatives from various species, many of whom acknowledged them with newfound respect. The political landscape had been forever altered by humanity's refusal to accept second-class status. The Horizon, a sleek, diplomatic vessel that concealed considerable defensive capabilities beneath its elegant exterior, waited in its berth. As Elena and Susan boarded, they took a final look back at Aurora Nexus, the site of humanity's diplomatic coming of age. "What do you think happens next?" Susan asked quietly as the airlock sealed behind them. Elena considered the question as they moved through the ship toward the command deck. "The Concord adapts or it fractures. Either way, the old system is gone." "And Earth's role?" "That," Elena said, "is entirely up to us. We've earned our place at the table. Now we need to show we deserve it." As the Horizon disengaged from Aurora Nexus and set course for Earth, Elena stood at the viewport, watching the stars. The future remained uncertain, filled with both promise and peril. But for the first time since humanity had ventured into the cosmos, they would face that future as equals, not supplicants. The humans had walked out of peace negotiations, and the galaxy had indeed regretted it, not because humans had sought vengeance or dominance, but because they had demonstrated a better path forward. A path based not on hierarchical stability, but on mutual respect and genuine partnership. As Aurora Nexus receded into the distance, Elena reflected that perhaps the most revolutionary act wasn't walking out, but being willing to return on better terms. That was the true strength of humanity, not just the courage to stand alone, but the wisdom to build bridges once respect had been established. The Horizon accelerated toward Earth, carrying with it the promise of a new dawn for galactic civilization. Behind them, in the chambers and corridors of Aurora Nexus, representatives from 20 species began the complex process of adjusting to a new reality, one in which humanity had proven itself not just a participant in galactic affairs, but a catalyst for transformation. And in the vast silence of space, the future unfolded one star at a time.